Thank you for attending today's webinar. Tad Stevens, CPEthink.com here. With a little housekeeping, there will be 3 poll questions per credit hour. All poll questions must be answered to get credit for the webinar. If you can't answer the poll for a technical reason or some other reason, just answer it in the chat and we will record it that way. Ask questions as we go. There will usually be at least 2 people working the questions or the chat box. There will always be at least 1. To get your certificate of completion, if you will look at the screen here, this is what your take exam column will look like before you complete the webinar or before it's over. After the webinar is over, give us about 30 to 60 minutes and we will have it up, the system updated from the webinar provider, and it will look like this so that you can get your certificate of completion. If you have any support issues, just click the chat bubble down at the bottom, open a new conversation like that, and we'll get it taken care of, or send us an email to service@cpethink.com. Thanks a lot.
Welcome back to Sales Mastery, Performance-Driven Selling. I'm Jeffrey McGee. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication and commitment to raising your own skill bar. So we're now at Performance-Driven Selling Module 4, page 17 in your workbook. So Module 4 wants us to recognize sometimes in the route of being successful in selling, and in the pathway of maybe engaging someone new that's not a customer, you're going to run into someone who's upset, angry, or hostile in your business growth model. And this may be sometimes you're reaching out to someone who you've never even met, you've never even sold, they've never been a customer. But you know, as you engage them, what you're going to find out is that they have some prior history with your organization, let's say, or someone that maybe used to work in the organization that called on them, and they're a little sideways and upset. So this section gives you some strategic ways of looking at them to find a way to engage them, to maybe neutralize that negative energy, try to find a civil way to engage them, to maybe even win them back. And part of that win back might be winning them back, not that they're going to be a customer, but maybe you have to win them back where they're just going to be neutral and not talk negative and work against you when you're not around. So that could be one context as you walk through this for yourself. So if you're brand new to sales your organization, you may actually want to double down and take some great notes, because this idea, go grab your sales mastery book and look at the technique called the morgue. I'm teasing you all right now. If you read that book and look at the morgue, that morgue concept I learned many years ago in working in a major business. It generated over $1 million in new rebooted sales to the organization, back when $1 million was an enormous amount of revenue to the organization. So if you're recruiting someone to your organization, think of the morgue as maybe a concept when you read it of where you're going to find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 immediate people you can recruit and enlist back into your organization that someone before you lost because they screwed up. So page 17, again, a last way of looking at this as we jump into it is that, again, in sales, sometimes you may have a customer. Whether you drop the ball or not doesn't matter. You may have a customer that's upset or angry or hostile with us. And so here's some strategies and techniques of how to go back and engage them. Whether you're talking about engaging them via email, telephone, video platform, face-to-face, one-on-one, you and maybe a couple colleagues have to go out and do an on-site visit with them to do damage control. So engaging the angry or hostile customer for business growth. So here's how I built this model, how it came to me many years ago. Working with, in essence, major organization, 2 major rental car corporations here in the country, a colleague of mine and I were working with them to create a program of how you deal with an upset, angry customer, to teach their frontline counter sales staff and how to win back valued customers you've lost so that their inside corporate executives that might have to go out and engage them could approach them. So we put the psychology hat on, and there's 3 things to jot down here on the top of page 17. So psychology teaches us that when you have to go out and deal with, in essence, an angry individual, there's 3 things psychologically that person wants us to do, 3 things. And what you'll recognize is that this is a very similar formula to what is taught and used in arbitration, negotiation, mediation, hostage negotiation. You'll start to recognize, wait a minute, I've seen anecdotally what Jeff McGee's about to present, whether it's news show, TV show, real life situations. So we're taking a page that's already been proven to work, and we're just going to simply sales-ize it on the bottom of this page. We're going to customer service-ize it, if you will, on the bottom of this page. So write these three things down. When you have to go deal with someone who's upset, the first thing that person wants, the upset person wants, is they want awareness. They want acknowledgement. They want somebody to stop and connect with them. So what they're looking for basically is acknowledgement. So number one is acknowledgement. They want someone to acknowledge them. Now, unfortunately, a lot of you and I, what we've learned, we believe, is that when you're upset, the only way you're going to get acknowledged is to blow up. And then you finally get someone's attention. And while historically, anecdotally, that might have been true for you and others, that's how people play it, even in a professional dynamic like this. So when you're engaging someone who's upset or angry, your first approach has to be not to take their side, not to agree with them, not to disagree with them, not to raise your voice and yell at it, because that's just going to blow it up even worse. But they are looking for someone to acknowledge them. So if I were to engage someone in this dynamic, in this scenario, page 17, and I were to say something like, I can appreciate your level of frustration with what's taking place. Let me stop everything, take some notes, listen to your scenarios, figure out how we can address this. And you can trip through a sentence like that, but what it telegraphs the other person is, okay, finally, someone now on the other side, or someone right here, is willing to stop the universe and acknowledge that I'm the only one present and that I have an issue, and they're willing to listen. So you can say a lot of ways. You can say, I'm sorry you've had that problem. And I know some organizations, they teach their professionals to never say that, because it sounds as if you're taking ownership that, yeah, we messed this up. So I don't want to get in the game of wordsmithing what's right or wrong per se. Just the first objective is acknowledgement. The faster you can acknowledge them, the faster you start to turn that negative energy around. Hey, remember that trajectory code model we taught you in webinar 1? So when you deal with an angry customer, they just went from trajectory A, C, which is success, over to A, B, which is derailment and failure. And you're trying to find a way to neutralize that A, B and move them over to AC. So that's exactly what this sentence does for those of you that are now on webinar 4 and you've went through the first 3. We're building on previous ideas. That's how you become more successful. So again, the first step is acknowledgement. Once you've done acknowledgement, and don't spend forever here, because again, upset people want 3 things. You did one, check it off, move on. Second thing that an upset person wants is they want, in essence, ownership. They want you or someone in their head, they want to know who's taking ownership of the issue I just brought to your attention, number 1, that you've just acknowledged. So when you say something like, let me take some notes to see how we can address this, you just did step 2 by saying, let me take some notes so I can see how we is the word ownership in this model, we can address this. You know what? Let's set up a time when I can get out there and let's sit down and walk through what took place there on your job site. And let's you and I put our heads together and see exactly how we can address this to find some resolution, or to try to fix this, or to try to solve this. I mean, that whole sentence, you just did 1, 2, 3, and I haven't even given you number 3 yet. So the first thing an upset person wants is acknowledgement. Second thing they want is ownership. They want to know who's taking ownership. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to solve this. I'm going to be your champion to see how I can go talk to X, Y, and Z to see how we can fix this if we can. Don't know, can't make any promises, but I'm going to take ownership of this. I mean, they want to know number 2. And the third thing that an upset person wants is they want action. They want somebody to be doing something. Now, here's what's fascinating about step 3. So again, 1, acknowledgement. 2, ownership. 3, action. Here's what's fascinating about action. A lot of us may say, this is what I want. This is what I'm entitled to. This is what you promised. But a lot of times what I have found, when someone's upset, they've embellished how bad something is in their own head to make it worse than it really is. So if you're just honest and straightforward with what you can honestly do when you can, because sometimes you might not be able to. We'll talk about those techniques later. But when you can, if you just address their needs, it's amazing how many times they might have yelled they wanted the universe, but they'll be very happy with basically this. So let me kind of just do some gesture gaming here. What we've learned as children through life to now your age as an adult, you think about 1, 2, 3 and the art of negotiation. What we've learned when we feel like we've been cheated or we've been shortchanged and now we're upset, so we want someone to hear our side of the story, that's acknowledgement. We want somebody to try to make things right with us or for us, that's ownership. And this is what I want, so here's the action that I'm after. What we learned a long time ago is if you want that in life, you never walk in and say, I want that, because a lot of times you won't even get that. So whenever you want that, you walk in and say, I would like this. And if you get this, great. A lot of times if you say, I want this, and you at least get that as a minimum, then you're okay. Then you learn if you want that, you don't even ask for this. You go in and you say, I want this. So that way, if you ask for this, you will at least be able to walk away with that. And then there's times you've walked in and said, I would like this, but you need this, and you don't get this. You've learned to walk in and say, I need this. So it's the same game if we think about action. So again, what someone is yelling that they're after, a lot of times they may yell this, but they're going to be incredibly happy with that. So that's another way of looking at action. What's fair? What's balanced? What's honorable? Where's the integrity line? Those elements. Now again, we're at section 4, so we're talking about how we engage that angry or upset or hostile customer or past customer to, in essence, be able to keep them and maybe win them back and even grow in that relationship down the road. In that context, again, we're not talking a traditional sales technique because, again, you've got to be careful. You know, there's an adage out there that actually gets us in trouble. It talks about, under promise and over deliver. A lot of people say that. You've got to be very careful. I don't necessarily believe in under promising. I believe in essence, living up to your brand promise, which is if you say you're going to do ABC, deliver it. Now, you've got to be conscious. There are times that you, in essence, promise ABC or say you're going to do ABC or you're known for delivering ABC, that you sometimes can add some extras, some X, Y's, and Z's. You got to be careful in over delivering, because if you over deliver and the other party doesn't understand that this is situationally a different opportunity where I can offer some extra. I want to do some extra. Because of the volume of business we do, I want to do some extra. Or because of a unique situation, I'm going to waive this or etc. See, people don't see the extra as extra. In their head, we run the risk as them seeing the extra as what they could be getting, should have always been getting, and therefore that's something that they're, here's that word, entitled to. So again, over-delivering can sometimes get you in deep trouble, which is also how this page comes up in our workbook, that maybe this customer's upset because maybe in the past we actually were in a transaction where we were delivering what they signed up for, what they purchased. But you, as a course of routine, started always offering extra, giving them extra. You never qualified that as extra. You didn't qualify, hey, I can't always do this, so please, hey, appreciate it. Don't beat me up in the future if I can't give it to you. So what happened is maybe your predecessor or your organization created some of the very scenarios you're in that have led to some of these upset and angry customers. Wow. Listen to what you just heard. That's also how we in sales make this sell, but create future problems, both individually and organizationally. So if I look at this 3-step formula, psychology has already found that the upset mind wants 3 things. They want acknowledgement, they want ownership, and they want action by some other party as it's addressed to them. What I've done is I simply have sales masteryized that formula, and now that's what's at the bottom of the page. So architecturally, I need you to put some additional notes down here on the bottom of 17. So if you want to, in essence, engage an angry, upset, or hostile customer, or you want to, in essence, further reduce the resistance and win back the customers, then you want to use the always listens formula. And if I take it into what I'm going to teach after this page, but stay on this one, we could call it the always sandwich an angry customer. So if you're a sales leader, here's a pop quiz. You could teach these 2 pages to your team, and then you could ask them in your own words. You don't have to use Jeff McGee's words, but in your own words, explain the always sandwich formula. And if your team can explain the always sandwich formula, you've got rock stars, A+ to everybody. But let's unbundle this one step at a time. So first, there's the always formula. So how you do 1, 2, and 3 on the top of the page is what the word always is going to strategically put you in a position to accomplish. So architecturally, we need to make some notes here. So ALW, 1, 2, 3. Draw a horizontal line underneath of number 3. So draw a horizontal line there on your printed handout, if you're doing this electronically on your system. So ALW is above the line, AYS is below the line. Now, to the left of 1, 2, 3, put a bracket. So to the left of 1, 2, 3, put a bracket. Underneath of that horizontal line, and to the left of 4, 5, 6, put another bracket. So to the left of numbers 4, 5, and 6, put a bracket on your handout. So architecturally, we're taking the always word on the bottom of the page, the always formula, and we're going to redesign it here. So to the left of that first bracket, you have a bracket on numbers 1, 2, 3. So to the left of that bracket, put a number 1. Put a number 1 to the left of that first bracket above the line. Below that horizontal line, you have a bracket to the left of 4, 5, 6. So to the left of that bracket, I want you to put the number 2 and the number 3. See, when you do ALW, you're doing step 1 at the top of the page. I'm going to teach you how to do acknowledgement. When you do AYS, you're doing numbers 2 and 3 at the top of the page, which is ownership and, in essence, action. Aha, got it. So here's how you would look at this model. Again, understand the intent. You could change these words tactically to do them any way you want. I don't care. But what the A is telling us we need to accomplish is number 1 at the top of the page is all about acknowledgement. So I want to change that negative energy so that I can try to engage the other person who's yelling or screaming or whatever. So A stands for apologize. Apologize. Now put a note next to the word apology or apologize, because the purpose of the apology in the beginning of the conversation is it serves as a diffuser. It serves as a diffuser. So if you don't want to actually say, I'm sorry, I apologize for what happened, use whatever word set you want, but the objective is your first sentence has to be somehow, some way, a way of diffusing that negative energy so you can engage them in a way that they're going to give you fact, logic, data, information. That's what you need. You need fact, logic, data, information from the upset party to be able to find out what happened, what took place, or what didn't happen, so we can start to formulate some solutions and ways to engage them. If someone's upset and they're giving you a lot of words, but a lot of those words fall into the category of emotion, rhetoric, hyperbole, doesn't help you. You can't solve that problem. So A is apologize. L stands for listen. Listen. So obviously when you offer number 1 an apology, you're going to frame it in a way where you ask them some kind of a question that directs them to start giving you information in a direction, in a trajectory that's going to help you as you gather the information. So the L is all about listen. Get into a listen mode as quickly as you can, whether you're taking notes, however you're taking them. Because the faster you can get into listen mode means your mouth is shut. You've given them some direction as to how to talk, so you can gather good data, which takes you to letter W, and W stands for write. Write, as in take notes. On a piece of paper, on a notepad you carry in your pocket, or in an annotated note field in your CRM system, or on a Word doc in your computer, or wherever. But the faster you can get into note-taking mode, based upon 2 and 1, you've formulated some great directional questions to gather information on what took place. That's powerful. So step 1 is acknowledgement, and by doing ALW, you accomplish that. Now, the information they're giving you might go pretty quick. So now you're ready for number 4. Or it might take an entire meeting just to do the first 1, 2, 3, and you come back on a second meeting to have the follow-up. That's still fine. Don't rush trying to get someone from upset and ugly to happy face. It would be nice if it works that fast, but seldom is going to work that good and that fast. So 4, 5, 6. So 4, 5, 6 is AYS. So now once you have at least an understanding, maybe a deep understanding, but at least you have an understanding of why they're upset or angry, which is the purpose of the first 3 letters ALW. Now it's our turn to respond. So number 4, the second A, stands for apologize again. Apologize again. Now, just as you put a subnote next to number 1A, apologize or apology, which its purpose is to diffuse the negative energy so you can engage him. Make sure you put a note next to number 4, apologize again, as to what the intent is of this step is. So again, you don't have to use the word I'm sorry or apology, but the intent of number 4 is to serve as a transition. This is a transition objective, a transition step. So strategically, you've got to look at above the line is how you engage them to get the data. Below the line, 4, 5, 6 is now, okay, now I want to respond. I want to engage you and try to move this forward and out of the mud. So I'd politely like you to shut up and listen to me. But you can't say it that way. So you want to look at that 4 as apologize again. Letter Y, your name. So Y stands for your name. And S stands for stop, summarize, solicit. So the S is all about stopping, summarizing, soliciting. Basically, you're going to provide a solution here. So to the left of 4, 5, 6, remember, you've written down numbers 2 and number 3. So when you do AYS, apologize again, your name, stop, summarize, solicit, this is where you're, in essence, telegraphing the other party the ownership objective that psychology has found at the top of the page and the action step that psychology has found at the top of the page that upset person is seeking psychologically. So 4, 5, 6 may sound like, again, use whatever words you would like. These might be my words. I might say, again, based upon what you just shared with me, I'm actually very embarrassed at what took place. And there are several ways that I'd like to visit with you about how we can address this and try to move this forward and solve this for you. Let me explain. More often than not, the person is going to go, thank you. And they're going to listen to us. Doesn't mean they're going to buy into what you're about to say, but at least they're now listening to you, which is the objective of 4, 5, 6 in that transition is, again, you're offering an apology. But notice I never said that. Again, I'm embarrassed at what you just shared with me. Or you could say, I'm sorry for what you went through. I understand why you'd be upset, and I thank you for giving me a chance to work through and address this. Based upon what you've walked me through here and the notes I've been taking, there's a couple ways I'd like to speak to this. Let me begin. Now they're listening to you. So it's a very powerful formula that you can use. We use it in therapy all the time. We use it in coaching scenarios all the time. We use it in leadership development all the time. We might as well take a proven page and now use it in sales. So what you're doing at this point on page 17 is thinking about, if I have to go engage someone who I know is upset, how do I strategically readjust my mindset and kind of a game plan together so I know how to facilitate that dialogue when I'm then with that other party? If I'm looking at, some account history, people that used to do a lot of business with us, but if not, in a while, and I talk to my colleagues or my boss or accounting or whoever, and they say, well, we had a falling out with them. And you say, well, tell me what that falling out is. You're gathering data from which you can then see if there's a legitimate reason for you to reach out to them, because if you're a new name, they might be upset, but they're going to be upset with the organization, not you, so don't take it personally. But they may also just want someone to hear them vent, let them vent, and then you can be able to engage them. And again, steps 1, 2, 3, ALW gives them that opportunity to vent. But again, if you give them the right question between number 1 and 2, the A and the L, then you're giving them a direction, hey, vent, but vent in this direction. So as I'm listening, I'm taking notes, I'm going to get something tangible I can be able to then process to figure out how to engage and move forward. But here's the problem with dealing with difficult or challenging people, the theme of this page, these angry and hostile, upset customers. Sometimes it's very difficult to listen to them or want to listen to them or hold self accountable to listen to them. So that's why I've given you the listen model on the side of the page here. So LISTEN. So we're going to give you 6, 7, 8 tactical ways to shut up and listen to the other party. Because here's the downside with the listens model on page 17. See, sometimes you and I may be frustrated with someone who's upset, and you put your hard helmet on and you went in to listen to them. And at the point at which you think you understand a solution, in our haste, we want to jump forward and solve it. Well, that's fine. If they're not ready to shut up and you jump in to try to solve because you're no longer listening to them, then the problem really isn't going to get fixed. It's either going to escalate, it's going to create a new set of problems, or what have you. So let me give you a couple ways to hold yourself accountable to listening to that other party. If you've ever done any social personality modeling, Myers-Briggs, DISC, any of those sort of this also is a helpful model because depending upon your social style, your personality model, some of us are over listeners and others of us under listens. You could also use these techniques as ways to manage your own psychographic in your head to stay focused on that psychographic in front of you. L stands for look. Look. Don't stare someone down. You have the ability to be in the same space with them or on a video conference call. Look at them to make sure their body language and their facial gestures are congruent with their words and what they're saying. See if their body language or words are not congruent. That could give you some clues of additional questions to be asking in a conversational way to get them to open up so you can really get to the root of why they're upset or angry or feel like they've been wronged. If I'm at this end of a phone call, then, or my earpiece, then I could be taking notes, or I could be taking notes. Sometimes I find out on my phone, sometimes I'm dealing with someone who's upset, and I'll bring up my message section. You have got a notepad in your phone, but for me, I'll usually bring up my message section, and I will type in my text field notes as to what they're saying as they're talking. So I can then not only see that, but I memorialize this in print, and then I hit send, and it goes to my email. So now I have it both on my phone, but on my computer later on in case I need to pull up some business documents or company documents as to how to engage an angry customer. I'll have a lot of notes right there to help me out in case I can't get into my CRM system or if I don't have a database management system. So those are some ways I do the L. I stands for interest. You know, the faster you can telegraph to the other party that you're genuinely interested in them, it is amazing how people start to calm down and become much more civil. They may even apologize to themselves being a jerk with you 10 minutes earlier in a conversation. So that that I kind of serves as how do you telegraph you're genuinely interested in the other party? S is summarize. Now this is like a pacing technique. The S stands for summarize. See, to you, what you're talking about with this upset customer may be automatic knowledge in your head. I mean, I could wake you up out of a dead sleep at 3 a.m. and you might be able to talk about these things. But keep in mind to the other party, what's common knowledge to you may not be common knowledge to them. So again, the more involved the conversation is, occasionally S, stop and summarize, solicit some feedback from them to make sure that what you said makes sense to them, they're understanding it, there's no questions with that piece of information before you continue on. The more technical a conversation is another reason to occasionally S, again, stop, summarize, solicit feedback to make sure that you're understanding them, they're understanding you, and that we're on a success trajectory. The more that they might be new to the conversation, new to the industry, or new to this topic, or new to this challenge, that could be another reason. You're not talking down to them, but occasionally you use this S as a pacing technique to stop and summarize and solicit what you said via question for feedback to make sure you're both still on the right track. So that S is a very powerful technique. T, wake-up call here. If you're dealing with someone who's really upset, you definitely want to be conscious and careful with letter T. So T stands for territory. And what we mean by territory here is yes, we're talking about the old one arm distance rule of, keep one arm distance between you and another person, general communication etiquette. Especially, keep one arm distance between you and someone when they're upset with you, because again, we sometimes misread that and we want to get a little bit closer to them so we can engage them because we're trying to be genuine and sincere in solving it. But sometimes their brain doesn't code it that way. Again, just think about for yourself. If you're talking to someone in a business context and they get too close to you, what do you tend to do? Most of us tend to just like autopilot. We take a step back. Well, then they take another step forward and it's like, hey, look, I'm not trying to dance with you. I want a little space here between us. So T can be a lot of things. So think of territory as any thing, vague word. I'll give you some examples in a second, but think of territory as any thing, any trigger that if you violate this letter T, territory between you and them, it could cause them to tune you and I out. It could cause them to all of a sudden re-escalate and they're upset. It could cause them to go right back to the point of being upset before you ever even started talking to them. So you don't want to have any territorial violations. Some examples. I'm going to assume away, I know dangerous word and observation, but I'm going to assume away that you and I don't willingly, consciously, normally make sexist or racist comments. But if you were to make a sexist comment or you were to make a racist comment, that'd be a territorial violation both in just general etiquette and society communication. But again, we're talking professional context in this webinar. But if I were to say or do something that implied a sexism or a racism, that could cause you to tune me out, stop the conversation, go ballistic, disengage, or or maybe you don't do any of that, but you're scoring in your head, hey, McGee just violated an IST, a sexist, racist territory. But there's other examples of territory that can be just as damaging as making a racist or sexist statement, which is why when you're listening, you don't want to, in essence, violate their T. And conversely, I'm not necessarily saying that you want to allow people to violate your territory, but be careful. Sometimes territories are simply those triggers or buttons that people love to push to throw you off balance. So territory can be the buttons or triggers that people push to throw you off balance, or to push your buttons to cause you to blow up and lose psychological control of your mouth and brain. And now you emotionally went off on a tangent and it creates more problems. So be careful of the T game. But if I were to make a comment, so here's some examples of other territories. Again, if I came into your office, whether I'm a peer, a customer, or your boss, and I just in essence sat down in the corner of your desk, I'm violating your territory. So again, you may not say something, but at least you're thinking that in your head. You're thinking, hey, you want to get your off my desk? And if you're thinking that, you didn't hear anything else I just said. So territory. Or if I were to make a comment that somehow implied I know more than you, or you know less than me, that's an educational territorial violation. Or that I've been doing this longer than you or more than you, then that could be a professional territorial violation. Or I'm richer than you, you're poorer than me. Now that's a financial territorial violation. So there's a lot of elements out there that could serve as territorial violations. And when you're listening to someone, be cognizant you don't violate any of those. But at the same time, don't necessarily have a spasm if someone violates one of yours, because they may not realize it. They may be doing it on purpose. But if the intent of this page in this section is how can you engage angry, upset, or hostile customers to solve that problem and keep them so you can go on to other things in life, or to win them back so now they're customers so you can go on to other things in your life, just address the page and move on. LISTE. E is another strategic tactical way to become more effective at listening and engage the person and pull them in. So E stands for empathy. The more empathetic you are, or the more empathetic you can be in a conversation, it tends to draw people in. When people feel like that we have a connection, we have some prior common experiences, or we have some shared DNA, if you will. People kind of come together. I feel your pain is, we have the same war wounds, etc. N. Here's a way to use letter N, and let's make it N cubed. 3 ways to use N as a strategic tactical listening technique. One is name. Get their name, know their name, pronounce their name correctly, and use it. In a phone conversation, just think about it. It's very easy for you to get distracted and do other things if someone can't see you. So if you're talking to this person, you want to make them stay with you without going overboard. Use their name as much as you can in a conversation. So whether it's Jeff or Jeffrey, find out the right way Jeff wants to be addressed, and then use it. Jeff, given what you just shared, I'm very embarrassed at what took place, and it is not what we live up to as an organization. Let me kind of maybe outline a couple of ways that we can address this, and I want you to tell me, what would be best in solving this. See, boom, I've now used the person's name, I pulled them in. So the name is very powerful. Again, if you're going to be pulling up information on your end of the computer or your tablet or your smartphone into a database or a cloud system to see some analytics and histories about them, get the right spelling of the names, you can find them. My name's right here on the screen, Jeffrey McGee. There's a lot of ways to spell Jeffrey, and if you're not spelling it the right way, you may never find me. And there's a lot of ways to spell McGee, and if you're not spelling it my way, there's a lot of ways to find McGee. You'll probably never find me. So the first is name. Second is notes. Become a much bigger student and fan of note-taking, taking notes. I carry a notepad with me in my professional jackets, of any jacket I wear, any suit jacket. So it's there as a tool to remind me strategically. I can write notes in any context to remember, so I'll know what to do next. When I'm dealing with an upset person, the mere fact that you bring out a notepad, and don't make it look like you're doing the old documentation game, because that could elevate negative or cause them to shut down. If you bring out the notepad from the context of, let me take some notes here. So I make sure I shut up. I want to listen to what your issues are, your concern is, your needs are. Let me take some notes so I can make sure I'm tracking exactly how we need to address this. Then you can take the notes. No one's going to be threatened. Here's a little sidebar positive to that one. I've also learned, some people, when they see you taking notes, they'll pace themselves. They'll say something. When you start writing, they'll shut up and let you finish it. Here's another thing I want you to write down. Don't get stressed. You're now managing them with your little bitty notepad. So the second is notes. Become a much bigger student and fan of taking those notes. And number three is nonverbals. Become a better student of not just watching their nonverbals as we talked about, but become a better student of making sure you're not sending out the wrong nonverbal. I mean, us fellow glasswares know that there's a lot of ways to talk to someone and push your glasses up your nose, because your glasses never stay on your head in the right place. It's a continual game of shove them up the head. But if you and I are talking, and again, remember the context of this section, you're upset with me. You're angry with me or my organization. I'm trying to engage you to solve it so we can, get into happy space and move forward. Well, if at the moment we're talking, you're upset, and while we're talking back and forth, or I'm talking to you, I gesture like that and push my glasses up, there's no negative nonverbal to that. If I, use this finger to push my glasses up, there's no negative nonverbal to that one. But imagine if you're upset and someone pushed their glasses up and they used a different finger. Might you catch out? Might you read into that? Might cause you to go ballistic? I don't know, but I don't want to have any of those mights happening in my interactions. So what you have on page 17 is now a strategic, tactical way to engage an angry, upset, or hostile customer. And maybe someone you've even lost, you're trying to win them back. Is again, engage them through the three-step model psychology has shown us that they want, and that is, in essence, they want someone to acknowledge, take ownership, and then do something, take action. The always formula gives you now a way to do exactly that. And the word listens gives you several ways to shut up and do exactly that as well, which is to listen to them. So given what we talked about in 17, let's look at page 18, because this is what it might look like if we were to build this model. Now, I love the old adage and phrase, and those of you who've been in my live workshops or conferences or been in my audiences at conventions when I speak around the globe know that I love adages. I love phrases, sayings. It doesn't matter how old your child is. If they're 5, 6, 7 years of age, they've heard, they've said, they start to understand adages. And boy, this could even become a great game at the kitchen table or in your car. You want to get your child into an MBA level conversation, rattle off a couple of adages, have them share with you an adage, and then stop and talk about what it means. That's how you business growth it. So there's an adage here. Help me out. A picture's worth 1,000 words. So if we look at page 18, this is called the always sandwich angry customers for profitability. So the always sandwich formula. Circle the words always sandwich on the top of page 18 so that jumps out, or highlight it. So we're going to create a sandwich here on page 18. So notice my numbers. They start at the bottom of the page, 1, then 2, then 3. So let's just quickly draw a sandwich adjacent to each of those numbers. So to the right of number 1, just draw the bottom piece of bread or bun. If you're making a sandwich, you're always going to start with that bottom piece of bread. So put that, draw an image at the bottom that represents a bottom piece of bread. Then go up to number 3, so leave 2 blank. Go up to number 3 and draw the top of a piece of bun or the top of a piece of bread. And that's when you're making a sandwich. You have the placeholder at the bottom, the first piece of bread. You've got the top piece of bread at the top, and you have that open space in the middle. You just put some big old squiggle lines there in between 1 and 3. And those squiggle lines are going to represent number 2, all the stuff that goes on your sandwich. So now here's how you use this sandwich formula so you can remember it. So look at the notes on page 17. I have or I'm inherited a customer, prospect, person who's upset. I have been tasked, charged, challenged, or I get the opportunity to go engage them. As I engage them, I'm deploying the always formula, and I'm being mindful to listen, the listens formula, and get all the data I need so I don't interrupt them, don't jump the gun. Now, from all that mental data I have, I go to page 18. Now, take all that information in your head and put it across the virtual kitchen counter in your head, and that virtual kitchen counter in your head is now all this information going on top of it as if you're going to make a sandwich. So, number 1, let's put some additional symbols or images to go with what you've drawn. So to the left of number 1, or inside that piece of bread at number 1, or to the far right side of the page adjacent to number 1, draw a plus sign. Plus sign. Number 1, you always start on a positive. You always start on a positive. Always start with something you can do. You unbundle everything you've heard from them on page basically 17. From that, there's going to be always something you can do, and that's what you do, number 1, with a sandwich. No one believes you're willing to make a sandwich in the kitchen of your house until they see the bread show up out there. You can have all the ingredients on the counter, but you ain't making no sandwich until the bread shows up. As soon as you got that one piece of bread, boom, your family, your neighbor, your friends, your kids, whoever you're making a sandwich for knows now we're getting serious. There's a piece of bread. So number one represents positive. You always end on a positive. Excuse me, always start on a positive. Number two, you can draw the negative sign. So all that squiggle for number two, that number two is the negative sign. Or in essence, number two represents the problem in the conversation, the challenge you've got to deal with, or sometimes you've got to say no because no is the only thing you say, because of rules or laws or regulations, Uncle OSHA, whatever. Sometimes we can't do the number two. We can't fix everything they want. So number two is where the uncomfortable part of the conversation is. So the note you jotted down for number one was always start on a positive. Always start on an action. Number two is always a fact-based response. Critically important. Your number two is always a fact-based response. So if the piece of this conversation is one, I can do something, so I've started with the one, but there's another piece I can't deliver what they want, and I know they're upset, and I don't want them to get more upset because I'm about to say a no. The point of number two is a fact is a fact is a fact, and a fact never changes. Now, down the road, a new fact may evolve, but that new fact doesn't mean the last fact was a lie. So if you respond with a fact-based statement number two, here's the beauty, folks. If you're dealing with an upset or angry person and you're in a scenario where you have a number two and it's a no, or I can't do it, or I can't do all of it, if your number two is always a fact is always a fact. And if they say, well, I want to talk to your boss, I would hope your boss understands the facts. And if they say the same fact, then again, they're learning. They can't go over your head and get a different answer. Now, a boss might introduce new facts of the way they may be able to address it, but it had nothing to do with you to do your job. The other beauty of using fact is in the future, you'll never have to remember what you said in the past because facts are always facts. So it gets us in troubles when you sometimes wing solving a problem now. Then in the future, when someone takes you back to it, you can't remember the context of why you did or said. You may not remember what you said or did. So you may contradict yourself, and then boom, that grows a whole nother new problem with it. So step one is you start on a positive. Step two, you deal with the problem and you do it in a very fact, honest, integrous way. Number three, draw a plus sign. And the plus sign of top, that top piece of bread, helps you remember you always end with some kind of a positive. End with a positive. I mean, you and I have grown up in retail sales. We've all been into a store as a customer and in a retail sale environment bought something. That standard last line that even a mediocre salesperson knows to say, but a professional really says it with some finesse. But if you're stuck with a situation where you have the bottom piece of bread, number one, something, yes, I can do, Dr. McGee. There is a challenge that number two, I'm not going to be able to give them what they want. So how do I end on a positive if that's all they've given to me? Go back and play customer. You have programmed in your head a perfect number three top piece of bread. Before you've ever left the store, the customer service rep always says or asks, is there anything else I can do for you? That's a great number three. Is there anything else I can do for you? Now, how you would use that sentence, though, on page 18, I would coach you a little differently. So if I do have an upset customer where there's something I can do to solve it, one, and there's something else I can do to solve it, I'm going to say that at number three so I can deal with the problem issues I can't solve, number two, and I'm going to be fact-based. So I might say, given what you shared with me, again, I'm embarrassed what took place. There's several ways we can address your concern. Number one, here's what I can do. Here's how we're going to do it. Boom, boom, boom. Number two, on that issue, I'm regulated. There's nothing I can do on that one. I wish I could. On number three, on this other item, here's the other way I'm going to address it. We can take care of this for you as well. Boom, boom, boom. Seldom are they going to yank you back to number two. They're going to say, thank you. If they do yank you back to number two, you're a broken record. You just say the same thing again. Don't make up a new sentence. Again, I wish I could change that and make that one, the way we used to do it. We're now regulated. We no longer have the ability to do that one. I can't, but I am excited that I could be able to do it. And you go right back to number three. If a customer gives you one, I can solve. Two, I can't, and they don't give you number three, then you adjust that sentence you and I have been a recipient on for customer situations for years. Now listen to how I'm going to adjust it. So one, I might say, here's what we can do. Two, I'm mandated. I can't do anything on that one. Three, outside of what else we've just talked about, outside of what we've just been discussing, is there anything else I can do for you? See, that transition part of the sentence is critically important. When you say outside of this, outside of what we've been talking about, is there anything else I can do for you? Because you sent the signal to the brain to say, let go of number two, let's move to three. And that will work most often than not. Sometimes it won't. They'll yank you back to two. Again, broken record. Just be very honest and, to matter of fact, and move to number threes. Again, the reason people sometimes will hear, no, I can't do, and they yank you back is because sometimes you said no to someone and they pushed you 3, 4, 5 times, and therefore you've given in. So a lot of times we've learned when someone says no, no's not always no. When someone says I can't always isn't I can't. So that's why they're pushing you to see, are you going to waffle or are you really going to stay in that one place? But if you're staying there based upon a fact, then they're going to realize, it doesn't mean you're going to beat you up, because a fact is a fact. It's not like you're doing it because you don't want to. So page 18 is a very powerful way of looking at how you engage that angry, upset customer so that we can get back to business growth opportunities. And it kind of gives you a very powerful way to pull that together. Making sense? Right. So page 19 is important. Classic research model came out in the 60s. Dr. Albert Moravian is given credit for this model. Some people challenge the validity of this. I personally think it still is very valid. So in complete transparency, there you have it. But I'm going to present it and you decide if you like it or not. I think you're going to realize, holy crap, this is true. So page 19 could be a life skill, absolutely. But in the context where we are in this webinar, in these 4 pages, we're talking about engaging and communicating with someone who's upset at some level, whether it's low level, intermediate, or they're off the rails. So when you go to communicate to someone, you want to be very careful that you don't blow up that conversation. So here's what the model says. So let's take these notes down very specific, so pay attention. When you communicate to another person, that communication signal that you send from you to them, 7% equals. So here's the signal, what you're transmitting. So underneath the transmitted, there's some lines, so let's fill in some answers. So 7% of the communication exchange basically is the words, it's the message. So 7% equals words, message. 38% equals para-language, para-language. Now, if you're like me, I have no clue what para-language is. I had to read a little bit further into this white paper. So some examples to the far right side of basically para-language. Para-language would be the message you're sending. Para-language would be your tone. It would be the tone, your pitch, your pace, your volume. So it's tone, pitch, pace, volume, accent. If I'm sending an email, para-language would be words you put in bold print, or you capitalize, or italicize, or underline, or highlight in red ink, or you send a message where you demand a red receipt back. I mean, all of that's para-language in the conversation. So 7% equals the words of message, 38% equals the para-language, 55% equals, so to the right of 55%, 55% equals the nonverbals. It's the nonverbals in the conversation. Facial gestures, body language, it's all the nonverbals. So here's how I learned to use this model. And again, in the context of this section, you want to really be sensitive that you don't, in that sense, cause someone to tune you out because you derail the conversation exchange and light them up and they become more upset. So here's what 7% deals with to the left. Here's what 38% deals with to the left. Here's what 55% deals with to the left. This is huge. So 7% of every communication exchange, when you're sending a signal, what their brain's going to interpret from, or when you're receiving a signal, what your brain's going to interpret from, 7% basically is WHAT. So 7% to the left, what it deals with is WHAT. It's what you've said, it's what you've written, it's what you're conveying. If you're the receiver of the signal, it's what you've heard, it's what you've read. Skip 38 and go down to 55. So 55 is basically WHY. It's why you've written it, it's why you've said it. It's their context of what you're interpreting, in essence, why they said what they said or why they wrote it. But now you've heard this before, but now you see with the math on this page and information on page 19 what it really means. So think about it. Do you know to the left of 38 what the answer already is? I bet you do. We've heard this before. It's not what we say or why we say that gets us in trouble. It's not what you said or why you said it that escalates negative communication. It's how. HOW is what goes to the left of 38%. So be conscious, if you look at the bottom of page 19, 100% of the communication exchange, it leaves you and goes to them. That signal, and in the context of dealing with angry, upset, or hostile customers, you want to be very careful of what you write or what you say or what you convey, that you don't, in essence, reignite the negative energy. So this gives you context then of how you can always listen and always sandwich an angry, upset, or hostile situation and try to work through it to resolve it, calm them down so we can now come back later and keep engaging them to maybe turn it back into a very good, productive, profitable relationship. So on page 20, let's finish the math. Now, number one, I don't believe we're ever going to be able to get an actual answer to. But the old rule book of leadership and what we wrote in Beyond Wow that we've talked about and the TARP organization we talked about and the Forum organization's data says one, So what we're tracking at number one is for every one upset, angry customer you have. So we're tracking one angry customer for these last 4 pages. Same thing here then. For every one upset, angry customer you have, that you know you have, that you do not engage, that you do not try to find a way to resolve, they will go out and tell at least 11 other people their nightmare experience. Think about it. For every one upset customer you have, they're going to go tell 11 other people how bad you are. You sometimes, maybe you don't want to acknowledge it. Maybe we're a little embarrassed to, but we sometimes have been that customer. We feel like we got the bad end of something, and we look for opportunities to share that with someone else. Maybe you don't actively look, but you're paying attention when someone says, I'm thinking about buying XYZ. And you go, whoa, I wouldn't. Here's my experience. Here's how bad they are. So because of the advent of the internet and social media, it's no longer 1 in 11. It's like 1 in infinity. Classic example, one of my clients I worked with years ago, and some of you may remember this. So years ago, there was an Army soldier traveling globally that went to get on a major airline. And when you're in the military, you don't travel with a handbag or underseat or luggage. You have a big duffel bag, that rucksack. And you can't get that in the overhead bin. So the soldier is coming back from representing our country in wartime and checked in with this major airline and shot a picture saying flying back home on XYZ airline. And they charged me, X amount of money to check my rucksack. So they really appreciate what I've just been doing for them fighting a war. What's interesting is that went virally on the social media. You can imagine. So that's a 1 in 11. But that airline was very sharp. Another reason why they're number 1 in their category. Before that plane landed, they had already social tweeted, thank you for your service. Thank you for your time. We not only refunded your money, we have changed our global policy, and any military veterans, or any military personnel traveling, your luggage is free on our airline. And we also have credited your account X amount of miles. So please, when you get back home and get situated, go on a vacation and take your family with you. I mean, they turn that negative around into a huge positive. So again, number one, someone's upset, they're going to tell people. And the problem with social media and posting it on social media platforms is it's no longer 1 in 11. Number 2, 7 other rule. So here's why it's important for you and I to look at those customers who are upset. We may not be able to resolve every problem. Got it. We may not be able to make everyone neutral or happy with us again. Got it. That said, we still need to be cognizant of whenever there's an upset or angry customer in your space and you have the ability to try to do something. Because number 2 says for every one upset customer you have that comes to you. So every one upset customer that comes to you, there could be 7 more just like them that will never let you know. That's powerful. And so number 2 happens this way. Think about a time when maybe you went out to eat a lunch or dinner with a colleague or friend or family member, and your meal's okay, but their meal isn't, and they're telling you how bad their meal is, and the wait staff walks up and asks you, how's your meal? And you say, great. They ask the other person how's their meal. More often than not, what do you think they say? Oh, it's fine. So see, that was an example of 7 others. That was someone who could have fixed it. They didn't tell them for whatever reason, doesn't matter. But now the next time you're later in life and you tell them, talk to them, ask them, hey, let's go back out to eat. Let's go to that one place that you like. If it's that one place, say, hey, they can say, no, I don't want to go there. So 7 others. So that's why it's so important to understand the 1 in 11 rule. So here's number 3 as we wrap this up. It simply says this. For every one upset customer you have, that you have, you want to make sure you engage them at some level, because if you engage them at any level, and you don't even have to solve 100% of their problem, but if you engage them, so look at the first page of notes, so they know that at least you acknowledge them, and they know that at least you try to do something that's ownership, and you try to do something that's action. We increase by 95% that when the 2 of you separate, hang up the phone, turn off the video call, you walk away, and they take a couple of deep breaths, they will remain a customer with 95%. You increase by 95% that they'll shut up, they won't tell anyone their negative story, and they actually will remain a customer because they're going to realize you were professional in engaging them. And that's what all of this is about, is professionally. How do you engage and take care of people? And in this first series of Sales Mastery webinars, all we're talking about are strategic ways of looking at everything in your portfolio, everything in your marketplace, so you can be more effective at what you're doing. And this is one of those examples. How do you engage them? So again, this program, How to Engage Upset Angry Customers, gives you some phenomenal strategies and techniques. So let's take what we've just presented to you here in Module 4, and let's talk about how you use this in your business. Let's talk about application very quickly. The application is simple. When you have an upset, angry customer, number one, don't run from them and don't ignore them. The longer you wait for you or your organization to engage them, it's not going to get better. Second walk away application is find a way to engage them, whether you have a bounce back mechanism electronically, whether you have one person maybe it's dedicated and better trained and skilled up than others to engage these sorts of customers, or whether it's you. But don't be threatened, don't have anxiety, and don't be scared to engage the upset customer. I've now given you some tools, and just think about the always formula. There's your model, there's your runway, there's your map of how to go engage them. And once you get the information, engage them by using a sandwich model. Application, sandwich these angry customers, sandwich them all the time. And the last thought about this is not only take care of the problem, but send them a week or 2 weeks later. Make a note in your system. Send them a handwritten note that says, thank you for being a customer. Thank you for giving me the chance to make this right with you. Send them a social media, or send them an email, or send them a gift, or send them a product, or send them an extra. Do something to go above and beyond to let them know that you are not just doing that so you can check the box and deal with an upset person, but you truly were sincere in how you engage them. Sales mastery is exactly its name. To be professional and successful in this industry, no matter what your business card says is your title, you're going through this series to become more effective and looking at the dynamics of professional driven selling and what drives it. And in this fourth module we just wrapped up, we're talking about the strategic ideas of just dealing with some of those upset customers. And you may go back in and look at some of your Excel spreadsheets, folks. You may go in and talk to, in essence, purchasing or accounting and look at the last customers from last quarter, the last 6 months, the last year, the last 2 years, the last 3 years, and just go back timeline sequentially. You may start to find you have serious business opportunities sitting out there being let go of because they were upset, and it's like someone out in your company or maybe you in the past, so you've forgotten them. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. There's a lot of business that can be collected by going back and dealing with upset customers. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your time. I'm Jeffrey McGee. Look forward to seeing you on the next Sales Mastery webinar.
Thank you for attending today's webinar. Tad Stevens, SMPDS here. With a little housekeeping. To get your certificate of completion, if you will look at the screen here, this is what your take exam column will look like before you complete the webinar or before it's over. After the webinar is over, give us about 30 to 60 minutes and we will have it up, the system updated from the webinar provider, and it will look like this so that you can get your certificate of completion. If you have any support issues, just click the chat bubble down at the bottom, open a new conversation like that, and we'll get it taken care of, or send us an email to service@cpethink.com. Thanks a lot.